to renegotiate this contract? Because after all, David don't know, but negotiating contract, Rafael Trotman don't know, Vincent Adams don't know. So they're going to come, right? And they're going to get a better deal. Well, so much for that. Again, last week they announced that they are not renegotiating the contract. Welcome, David Patterson, and welcome, Dr. Vincent Adams. How are you guys doing?
Oh, I'm fine here, man. Glad to be below the belt with you, man.
Yes,
Who vex lose?
same here, Sharon.
Who vex lose?
Pleasure being here and talking, having straight talk with the Guyanese people to give them the facts.
Well, Sharon, the first thing we gotta ask is what the weather's like by Vince.
Dr. Vincent is joining us from in the diaspora. Doc, tell us precisely where. Well, you might want to tell us precisely, but tell us generally where you are and how the weather's there.
Well, I'm in Tennessee, and it's right probably around the middle of the USA. So I'm kind of mild weather. I'm not up north with my good friends. They're enjoying the colder part of the country. So I'm comfortable and doing good, and staying indoors, of course, running from the COVID.
Fantastic. David, how about you? I hope the weather is the same if you're in Georgetown. You like to go on your safaris and so on. So
yeah, I call it walkabouts, but yes, I'm in Georgetown. I'm in Lodge. I recently heard somebody say that Lodge don't Dutch well. I don't know. You got to start looking at our membership for Lodge, eh?
Yes, definitely.
That's where I am. Been here since I was a tiny little boy. I'm still here, but and I know other people from Lodge. Genuine people from Lodge don't Dutch. We don't Dodge now. Don't we out? But that's a discussion for another day.
Yep. Lodge don't Dodge. Respect and manners to all the folks from Lodge.
Yeah, that's the one thing I miss. David used to drag me all over town in his little spots there. So I miss that. I envy you guys for not being in Guyana. So I miss David not taking me to his little spots there in Georgetown and the corners of Georgetown, I must say.
When you're back, Vince, they're still there.
Well, you all know the old adage: memories don't leave like people do. But let's talk about these Jagabats here, fellas. Let's start with you, Doc. You are the EPA, doing great things there. Monitoring and evaluating this oil sector, supervising the oil sector. One might say, David, you were at the policy end to some extent as well. What do you guys make of this about face of the PPP from renegotiating this oil contract? Lots of the other promises they have broke, but this is a big one.
Yeah, as you know, Sharon, I worked at the highest level of the U.S. government, and I managed these. Not only manage, I developed in my department, developed these type of contracts. I ran these contracts, renegotiated or not well negotiated contracts. And the one thing I know, Sharon, is we were in charge. The government is always in charge. All contractors, and I'm talking about the Exxons of the world, the biggest contractors in the world. They understand that when the government says jump, they ask how high. In Guyana, it's a complete reverse. As a matter of fact, Sharon, in every single government contract in the United States, there's a clause in there that says the government shall terminate or has the right to terminate any contract for convenience. For convenience, meaning that we always have the hammer by the handle. And in Guyana, what has happened is here we've got Exxon comes into our own house and setting the rules for running our house. And we're even afraid, we're timid to even ask them to change the rules. That's what's going on here. And Sharon, this whole thing about sanctity is absolute nonsense.
Yep. Doc, let me just spell that out for our listeners. The installed PPP regime has said part of why they're not renegotiating the PSA is because there is sanctity of contracts. Mind you, they have come into administration and a lot of people had contracts with this government to work, who they give the boot to, who they push out. So they don't respect sanctity of contracts. Nonsense. Go right ahead, Doc.
Exactly. And let me tell you why it's nonsense. First of all, it is written, the contract was written with that provision that the contract could be renegotiated. It says it here, and I can't remember the exact clause, but it says the government shall not amend, modify, rescind, terminate, etc., without the written consent of the contractor. We have not even asked them. That clause is in there for that specific purpose that says it could be renegotiated with agreement by both parties. We have not even asked them to renegotiate. They come into our house, set the rules, and we're afraid to even ask them to renegotiate. And here's why I'm telling you again, it's nonsense. I was at the EPA and I went against it. I will not renegotiate it, but I told them, I dictated to them. As a matter of fact, I told the general, the manager, the country manager, that I am not gonna. I said, bro, you understand that I know what you got to abide with in countries such as the United States, and I'm not gonna ask you for anything less. The first thing I told them was this whole thing about insurance for if there's a spill. I forced them into going back because EPGL is a limited liability corporation. They didn't have any coverage if there was a spill, no assets whatsoever. I said I'm not accepting that. I'm not signing any release to permit without you going and getting your parent company to cover all liabilities, whether it's $10 billion, $100 billion. You've got to do that. They agreed to it, even though the contract said that they could be self-insured. When he told me about the contract, I said I could care less. I could care less about the sanctity of contract. The only thing I care about is the sanctity of protection of the people of Guyana. Do you know that they went along with what I told them that they had to do in terms of agreeing to that, to having their parent company sign off for those insurance to cover guaranteed insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what happens as soon as I left? The government rescinded it. The government stopped it completely. When we were about to sign the agreement, the government has stopped it. So now we're left without insurance. But my point is, here's the other thing, Sharon. There was another clause in the contract that says the government has to give Exxon 7 days notice to visit the ship. I said, absolutely not. We will have unfettered access and even unannounced visits. They had to go ahead with that, even though that is in the contract. So this whole thing about sanctity of contract is nonsense. It's just that we do not have the spine to stand up to Exxon, who's coming into our own house and setting the rules for us. That's what's going on here. They're basically telling us what to do instead of the other way around, that they have to abide with in countries such as the United States. That's basically what it is.
Yep. David, what is your take?
No, well, I 100% agree with Vince down there. You know what I mean? While we were in office, we had made a very clear policy. They were given the first oil find that we found was Lisa. Remember Lisa 1 and Lisa 2? They were the first two oil finds. That was back in 2015. And they got production. They got permission to go to operate those 1 and 2. But we made it quite clear, right? We made it quite clear that this is not, we're not doing a cordon blanc approval.
Mm-hmm.
Piara, which Vince would know about, we had conditions, strict conditions, and if they didn't like it, if they felt out these conditions were onerous and those things like that, Vince would know from EPA, we had several concerns in how they were operating, and we said to them, well, before, as a government, we approved Piara, even the EPA and the production, and they had to get the production license and those things like that. We have several things that we need to discuss with you, and included in that discussions, I'm sure we want to have a global discussion, not only what's in the contract, right? And Vince is right. Well, we have to write to them, say, listen to me, we signed a contract, we've honored it for phase 1, phase 2. You are not losing, you will be always making money because of course Lisa 1 and Lisa 2 will make back them all the money they would have invested in Guyana, plus more. We said, however, we need us to address this, and let us have a discussion on how we address these issues we want to talk about. You know what I mean? And we would have done that, and I'm sure 100% sure Exxon would have agreed as well, because they know it around any which way they cannot lose. They would be in a better position, and the country will be in a better position if we met. So the issues that Jagdeo and team are saying, sanctity of contract and those things like that. Vince is right. They don't have the cojones. They like it that way. Of course, they've taken all the money and yes, and they've taken all the money. We have over $500 million in the bank in New York, and they're not touching it as though it's a good thing. They're saying to people they're not touching it as though that's a really good thing. But what they're not telling the Ghanaian people is that they're borrowing again. So we have $500 million in a bank in the United States, earning still 1%, and we're going to use that as collateral and go to the Chinese and all sorts of people and borrowing at 3 and 4%. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And there are people that cheering, saying, "Oh, you have all this money, we haven't touched a cent of it." What is it's our money? You know what I mean? What they don't want to do is, because there's a natural resource fund, which says to them, which forces them to come to the parliament and to disclose certain information. You know what I mean? So you can't go and award a contract to some Chinese contractor behind your back and for kickbacks and those things like that. You have to come to parliament and get approval from parliament for the spending of the money. They don't want to do that, so they haven't activated it. So we knew because everywhere that we went, every meeting we had with Exxon, they were all they were saying, "Oh my gosh, this is the model load. This is such a great find. This is such a good find. Such a good oil discovery." Every cent Exxon would have pumped into Guyana, so far they would have recovered it by now, or just with Liza 1 and Liza 2. Right. So therefore, if we said to them, this is to be something different, like Vince said, Vince was doing, Piara and onwards, because it's 21 finds they have, Piara and onwards, look, listen, gentlemen, we're going to write you, and we can reach an amicable discussion. It may not be on the royalties, it may not be only on royalties and percentages and those things like that, but there are other areas in which, as Vince could tell you, we want this tightened up. Right, so we're having a discussion with them. It's to tighten up these areas and as well, because as the world evolves, you know what I mean. Just have the COP meeting in Scotland. New commitments have been made. Now Exxon and Guyana has to adhere to those commitments. Not only what we obtain, but globally.
Yeah.
And some of those commitments may be in conflict with a contract. How are we, if we don't have that discussion now, how are we going to meet our commitments if we allow Exxon flaring, for example? We allow Exxon to flare, but then we say we're going to reduce our carbon footprint, right? So the discussion is not only about the discussion is about the whole operation of the oil and gas sector. Because in 2015, before 2015, there's no oil and gas sector. So therefore, everything evolves. We have to evolve as a country. So does our contract negotiation have to evolve.
David, I'm happy you raised the issue of the Natural Resource Fund, because that's a part of our discussion. But before we get there, I see joining us, we got Enid Roller or Ina Roller. I see Mohammed Zamdin and Deborah Haley and Audrey Ward. All you great, fantastic people who are joining us on social media. We invite you guys to share the live stream, and we want to see those emojis as well. As we always say, guys, welcome to the discussion. We have with us on the line, we got David Patterson, former Minister of Infrastructure. We got former CEO of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Dr. Vincent Adams, and we're talking about the PPP's broken promises in oil and gas. David, on the issue of the Natural Resource Fund, this is another issue that these guys say they can come and rectify and implement and activate and all of that. 16 months later, 17 months later into their install administration, nothing. And you've articulated very eloquently part of the reason why they didn't want to come to Parliament to discuss and to agree with the opposition how this money going to spend. Broken promises.
Right. so Sharon, here's what Sharon and viewers and your listeners, here's what's happening. This government has went to the Chinese Exim Bank and asked them for a loan of 1.5 billion US dollars to build projects, to build a new Demerara Harbor Bridge, which I could talk on from I think the Milo Falls, which I could talk on from now until next year. Then they want to build they want to build a highway over the west coast, and they want to build East Coast, East Bank thing. All nice globally projects, which of course, if they're done correctly, will benefit the country. However, as Doc would tell you, if we start with the Demerara Harbor Bridge, EPA, etc., they don't need an environmental EIA. They don't need an environmental assessment report. Only the Chinese would be comfortable of building a bridge with all the environmental implications without an environmental assessment, right?
And
The Chinese bring the money, right? Of course, no. I mean, look, no European firm or American firm or any firm that knows the consequences of bridge building and those things like that would build, because they know they're liable, right? So we go and we borrow this $1.5 billion. We don't touch our money, because if we touch our money, we have to go through a public procurement process. This $1.5 billion comes from China. Only Chinese contractors can bid. And you should see how and you know our history of Chinese contractors in Guyana. And they're the only ones who would be comfortable putting up a bridge of that magnitude without environmental assessment implications. Because of course, irrespective of what you can be sued. Right? Somebody can sue you the fisher folks can sue you if their fish is depleted because of how you build a bridge and those things like that. So this is what they're doing. They're rushing these things, borrowing against it with no oversight. You know what I mean? There's no oversight whatsoever. And meanwhile, we have almost more than $5.5 billion in an account. What it is, folks, is that if your parents left you $1 million, $2 million, instead of you taking that $2 million out of the bank and building your house, you say to the bank, you hold my $2 million and lend me $2 million, I'll pay you interest on it. That's really what's happening. So the money that we have is our money, right? We're not spending it on us. And of course, if they activate the Natural Resource Fund, there are other clauses in it, such as stabilization. Within that Natural Resources Fund, there's a section for stabilization. Stabilization, ladies and gentlemen, is if like what is happening now, your cost of living goes ramp up. You can take money out of that fund to stabilize, say, the US dollar, stabilize the economy. So they don't want to activate that. They only want to give you 7% to say that we love you. But of course, if you have stabilized the Natural Resource Fund, if you had a Natural Resource Fund and it's activated, all the cost of living, the government would have been able to take from that fund and inject it into the economy to help keep the cost of living manageable. You know, so we have inflation 40%. They could have taken out, I don't know, $20 million US dollars out of the fund to drop, I don't know. I mean, I'm not economic, but I'm not making it simple to help fight the inflationary costs. I mean, shipping costs, that was the reason for it. The government could subsidize the shippers so that we can get our product, whatever product we have here, cheaper. That's what the Natural Resource is there for. Not just to build roads and bridges, but they don't want to do that.
And David, other people share that same trail of thought as an asset, because you had engineer Charles series on live just yesterday, who speaking to this Charles Ramson issue, said if you're talking about loving Black people and wanting to empower Afro Guyanese, here is where you can do it, because we are now post oil and you given 7% to public servants, of which Afro Guyanese make up the bulk of the public service. So just as an aside, there are people out there who share that same sentiment.
Yes, no, listen to me. So the money in the fund the money we earn from oil is not and the government's money, it's the people of Guyana's
Well, I
money.
thought it was
This
Irfan,
country,
Ashley, and Catfish money.
that's how, and yeah, that's how they
Jack Dio,
behave.
I thought it was
But
their money.
this money here,
But but let,
this,
let me
this
add to what Dave is saying, and Dave touched on some excellent points here. Because what is happening here is we've got a reverse Robin Hood, which is being driven by the government. Here
Uh-huh.
you've got these mega rich corporations, and they're going around the international community bragging. And I'm not, exaggerating. They're bragging about how they're going to Guyana, because of Guyana, they're going to be debt free. They were in debt. Exxon and Hess and all these guys, they're now getting debt free. But at the same time, we putting ourselves in debt by just borrowing. We do not even want to go and audit. Here you've got $9.5 billion.
I come into the adage. We come in there.
Good. But my point, so there is a reverse Robin Hood where we're robbing the poor people by this contract, and we've got a government who's supposed to be protecting the interests of the people of Guyana. We're robbing the people, the poor people of Guyana. We are starving. Now I'm hearing the GWI is planning on cutting off water. We people, we getting blackouts. Food prices are sky high.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers are getting 7% raise instead of 700% raise. If we were getting that all revenue, those are the kinds of things. So at the expense of people, we're digging a hole of debt for ourselves while we're filling up the hole of the big major rich companies. This is reverse Robin Hood that is happening here,
Mm-hmm.
and the government does not even have the spine to even ask. Now, I'm not even saying demand yet, because that's what we should be doing, is demanding. But we are even afraid to even ask Exxon. So I'm asking the media, and I'm pleading with the media to let Mr. Jagdeo answer the question as to whether he has ever asked Exxon if they want to renegotiate. And if he has, what have they said, and why has he just dropped it like that? So those are the kinds of things that, David brought up this thing about the EIA. Here's another problem for the bridge. The EPA officers in November of last year, the EPA officers made an assessment of that project and determined that it needed an EIA, and they were turned down by officials in the government. They told them, what they told the officers at EPA, that they've got to find a reason why they should not have an EIA. That's not the way you run an agency that is supposed to be providing oversight. But those are the kind of malpractices
Mm-hmm. Correct.
that we're suffering in Guyana, and the people are suffering because Exxon Exxon and Hess and Sunup, they're carting away millions of dollars, while the poor people of Guyana, they're being robbed of millions of dollars in their pockets. So they're emptying the pockets of the poor to make these mega rich companies richer, and they're laughing at us all the way to the bank. That's what's going on here in Guyana.
And Doc, I'm happy that you've mentioned that, because when we talk about all of these money, they talk about, I think we just had our fifth and final oil lift for 2021, and all of the money that we earning off of it and all that. Guyanese not feeling that in their pockets. So we are numb. You hear discovery after discovery. We are numb to that,
But
because
Exxon
our
is, though.
economic
But
situation are
Exxon is.
changing.
Exxon is, though. Exxon and Hess, they are feeling because
yeah,
you know what? They're benefiting big time. We're the ones without Guyana, and trust me, without Guyana, Exxon would not be in business. We are the lifeblood of Exxon. That's the leverage we have. We are the lifeblood of Exxon.
exactly.
Right now, we are accounting for about 25% of all of Exxon's recoverable reserves of oil.
Wow. So then you were right, Doc. Them guys smiling all the way to a bank. Nice time for Christmas.
Absolutely. Had it not been for Guyana, Exxon would have been moved off of the top 25. They will move out after the Dow Jones Industrial Average, investment thing. They were removed because they were no longer, at one time they used to be the largest corporation. Then so they're not anymore because of debts and problems, financial problems, etc. Guyana has become now the lifeline for them. So they cannot survive without Guyana, and we should understand that and use that as leverage.
Fantastic.
Shara,
Jump in, David.
Shara, before you jump off the natural resource fund, I think maybe we could do a dedicated session, but quickly I want to explain to people what the natural resources fund, how it's supposed to be, because a lot of them may feel it's just like a bank account. But the natural resources fund was set up and it had three separate components. One component was for now, which is present day, like say it wasn't even a third, say like a quarter. So if we have $100 million in the bank, $25 million goes now for what we want to do now. Build a road, do this, do that. Then another component is with stabilization, which we talk about, which is to ensure all Guyana, not any, all Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
If for example, I don't know, there's a massive oil, I'm just using oil, like in 79 when oil prices went ridiculously high.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of letting the country feel it, and the government would step in and use that fund to help cushion it. So they would pay, instead of the gas prices like they are phenomenally high, the government would pay 50% of the cost of the oil out to this fund, only for a short period of time. And then the third component is what you call a generational fund, right? So this is like money you put in aside for your children, when they grow up. So therefore that generational fund, so therefore my children, your children, my grandchildren, they will have this savings that they can use whenever it is. And so the idea behind the natural resources fund is put all the money in the bank account, and every year you are only allowed to take out, I don't know, 10% or 5% or whatever the percentage is. And that 10% you take out every year, it goes towards our budget. So right now it's over $500 million. We would have been able to save $50 million every year goes to our budget, and that goes towards our schools, our roads, our health system, our wages, and those things like that. And that is the idea behind it, and that is what they don't want to do, right? So when they claim they don't have money for school teachers and things like that, they have it, but they don't want to touch your fund because, of course, they only want to get you if you hand them out. I know if we keep a whole entire nation hand them out, they're dependent on you.
Yeah,
that's all they want to do.
Yep. David, I'm happy you said that. I see a lot of people joining the discussion. I see Julian Marks and Pamela Thomas, Oren Barker. I see some other folks as well. I see James Victor Mars and Clifton Hoyt. I see Laverne Joseph. David, one of the questions I'm seeing here on social media is if to force both Exxon and the government to act in a certain way, we can take them to court. Don't you have a litigation in the court to some effect where it concerns this whole oil and gas issue?
There are litigations already in the court which to do with flaring. There's litigation to do with environmental issues. There's a litigation in to say that the contract needs renegotiated. But folks, the best thing, because litigation, let me tell you something. Exxon has been, Exxon is like the old colonializers of the old days. They've been doing this thing here for over 100 years. So Guyana is not the first third world developing country that they would have these sort of contracts and behaving like this. So they have an entire law firm, right, probably 200 people, who will keep us there in a legal battle for years and years and years to come. All it is now, what is needed is the country, is the politicians, and do exactly what Ben says, right? Them to say, listen to me, we would like to have a discussion on certain sections of the contract. Long as you do that, not only the public pressure in Guyana comes to bear, the public pressure in internationally At their last board meeting, at Exxon's last board meeting, 3 or 4 of their directors came from very small company who are very, very environmentally conscious. So if you write and say we would like to have a discussion on these issues, environment and equity and things like that, even the board members, even though they're a minority in Exxon, will say yes, you're taking advantage of this poor country because at the time when the contract was done on your own, there's no oil and gas industry. So therefore, we don't even have to go to court. We just have to get the band together and take on Exxon as a country.
So David, I think I
Well,
think
let me, Sherrod.
Go ahead, Doc.
Let me add. Here's something that, of course, I've been mentioning it publicly forever, but you know, people need to understand. As David rightly said, I think there are 2 lawsuits, but they're private lawsuits. I, at the EPA, took Exxon to court, and as soon as I left, the government dropped the case. When Exxon had 6 spills within a year, small spills, nevertheless, but it shows to me they had the small spills, and you know, I fined them the maximum possible that I could have fined them, and they refused. Which was just $500. They refused to pay it, and just by having small spills tells you something about their culture for safety, which is very troubling, because if you can have small spills, the same thing can happen, and that can result in bigger spills. I took them to court. We were you know, we filed the case against them, and as soon as I left, the government dropped the case. Not only did they drop the case, they fired the lawyers. We had 4 lawyers when I left EDA. Now we've got 1 lawyer. They fired all 3 lawyers who were involved in these type of cases. That's what is happening here. So it's not a case where a lot of times I know the EPA is under the gun, but the EPA folks are not allowed to do their jobs these days. They're just, you know, the politician jumps in and tell them what the result should be, and then they've got to find a way of coming up with that result, a reason to.
They're getting instructions.
Absolutely, that's what's going on. What's going on. It's I mean, it's horrible what's happening. You know, I wish that the folks could be free to speak, the employees at EPA. We've got an exodus now of people from the EPA, an exodus
Doc,
of the best and brightest people.
Doc and David, you know, that is very, very sad. People leaving, and qualified people, competent people leaving, because we're going to end up in a worse place. But I think I hear both you, Doc and David, to say that if we had a responsible government, then they would be more regulatory than they are being now. And that is a point I read in a Starbucks News editorial quite recently, where they are saying that the government seemed to be more a partner with Exxon than a regulator. And that does not augur well for the Guyanese people. That aside, Doc, I want to dial back to this whole issue of the EIAs. And David mentioned it earlier, the environmental impact assessment, because it's an important safeguard for the people whose interests should be safeguarded. But it seems as though the default mode of this installed administration, this catfish regime, is that there are no EIAs needed. You see, that seems to be the defaulting, because for the New Demerara Harbor Bridge, they have said they don't need an EIA. It's a no-brainer. For the oil exploration of the Kanji block, no EIA. The oil and gas waste treatment facility that was supposed to be at Cover then, no EIA. The Marriott Branded Hotel for good for acting, they don't need an EIA. The gas to shore project at Wales, no brainer, no EIA needed. So it's a series of huge projects that they have said you don't need EIAs. So let's start there. What is the position with these people?
Well, it's a shame and it's a disgrace. As a matter of fact, we've now become the laughing stock of the world. You know what I tell my friends, you know, my professional buddies up here, and when I tell them, you know, what is happening in terms of not wanting an EIA for a bridge and for our exploration, I mean, they laugh and a lot of them don't even believe me.
Doc, for the folks who might not be familiar with the EIA, break it down for our listeners.
All right.
What is the importance of an EIA, an environmental impact assessment?
And you said that it's an important document. It is the document. It's not a or an and. It is the Bible that you use to constructing big projects. Even David can tell you. David, when he was minister of infrastructure, and I was at the EPA, even David, I used to give a rough time. That I used to tell him in no uncertain terms when he brings in his project,
That's right.
like
That's
road
right.
construction.
That's right.
I said, no, you have to have an EIA. But an EIA, what you do when a company submits a proposal for a project, you look at it and you look at the environmental impacts. And the one thing you always do, unless you're absolutely certain that there will be no environmental impact of any consequence, you always err on the conservative side, meaning you don't wait until something happens and then you investigate upfront.
Proactive. You got to be
to see-
proactive in this business.
you look at you bring in all the scientists in every single area. It might be biologically related, it might be environmentally related, it might be chemistry, it might be air pollution, water. All those specialists come in. You run models. For example, as to, well, okay, if this happens, if you produce at this rate, this is what's going to happen, etc. So you run all those models, and to determine what the impacts are, then you put in mitigative actions. You cannot fix 100% everything, but during construction, you say, well, okay, here's how we're going to mitigate against sedimentation in the river, or mitigate if the plane has to fly, to get to the Ogle airstrip, the bridge is in its way. How are we going to reconfigure the bridge so that this wouldn't happen? Those are the kinds of things you look at. You just can't come and say willy-nilly without scientific input to say you don't need an EIA. The EIA is the critical. And speaking about EIA, here's something that, and I'm sure you've been reading in newspapers here in the past few days. Exxon is now violating the EIA when it comes to production rates on Liza 1. The EIA specifically says that the safe, listen to me now here, Sharon, the safe operating limit is 120,000 barrels per day. And they're bragging about averaging for the last quarter 124,000 barrels per day. That is unsafe. You don't ever, they talk about sacrosanct, that the agreement is sacrosanct. The safety limit set in an EIA is 1,000 times more sacrosanct, and they're violating it willy-nilly. And then you have the EPA executive directors coming out and doesn't have a clue as to what the EIA says, and then is backing Exxon up when I say that if they're violating, even though it's explicit.
Because the guys are partners. They're not regulators. They're partners.
Well, I think it's even more than partners. It's just they're subservient to Exxon. But this is dangerous. This is dangerous. They're playing with fire. When you're gonna exceed the safety limits set by the EIA, as a matter of fact, you know what companies normally do? When we set the safety limit here, they normally make sure that they operate way below the safety limit, so that they wouldn't even get close to the safety limit, because it would be time for shutting down their operation.
They're playing fair. They're playing fair.
Here's the other thing. In that same EIA, the design production limit. You know what the design rate of production? The design now is 120. It's 100,000 barrels per day. 100,000 barrels per day. The safety limit is 120,000 barrels per day. And then they're using this fake number, about 144,000. We don't even have the expertise to even read what the EIA says. The 144,000 barrels per day, which is what the EPA is claiming, it was used for a different reason. It was used to model. It's a number that was put into the model to see what the emission rate would be. It had nothing to do with safe production limits. So we can't even read our own EIA and understand what an EIA says.
What a shame. What a shame.
Sherrod,
Jump in, David.
let, let me tell you your views because some of the consequences of when you don't plan right. Everybody knows Hague Bosch, which is the landfill site.
Uh-huh.
They put Hague Bosch at the back of Echo, right? When they did it, of course, all the residents in Eccles and those things, they didn't really care because they said, oh, it's the back of Eccles and those things like that. Now, people living in Eccles and Providence and those areas and so are complaining, right, that the smell and the odor, the traffic is the garbage trucks and those things like that,
Yeah.
and several other adverse effects of a dump site. So that is what an EIA does. It doesn't delay your project, nor it says to them, listen to me, if you're going to put a landfill site next to a residential area, if we're going to allow you to do it, you have to put in these particular measures to ensure that when it rains, you don't have no smell. When the garbage truck go on the road, you don't break it up. You could only operate in these hours and those things like that. So the EIA doesn't stop you doing the project. It says to you that if we do this project and this project is going to last for 25 years, and we can consider building a housing development there, or you have a close by housing development, these are the safeguards and the measures that you have to design to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that.
Well, David, I happy you mentioned Hague Bosch, because I wish we would just carry the whole PPP, the whole cabal, and rest them down in Hague Bosch. Doc, you wanted to jump in there.
Hey, David, it's worse than that. Now, when David designed the landfill, and he can tell you it was designed for municipal waste, garbage. Do you know what they're going to be putting into that landfill now? Hazardous waste coming from the oil companies. It was never designed for that.
Father,
as a
help
matter
us.
of fact, I had made it clear to Exxon that not to Exxon, to whoever was running the landfill, that it will not be permitted as long as I am
Come
there.
for your world,
Because
Father.
first of all, it's in the water table itself. It was never designed to carry hazardous waste. And the Exxon waste that is coming off, that is going to be put into that landfill, is a hazardous waste, hazardous and toxic waste. It was never designed for that. So here they're abusing the environment,
Yep.
without
Yep.
nobody is pushing back. We
Champions
have
of the earth.
guardrail whatsoever.
So you see, Gerard. So when we ask, even right with Demerara Harbor Bridge now, they want to put it in Nandi Park, smack in the middle of a residential zone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the people around Nandi Park, Windsor Forest, and those things like that consider that their properties are high value properties.
Mm-hmm.
But the second you have now 25,000 cars passing there during the course of the day, the emissions, all your buildings will now get dirty. You know what I mean? You got people, you can't hang out your clothes and those things like that.
Jack Joshua land the bridge by he house.
Yeah, but those are the consequences, you know what I mean? That will have the noise pollution. You know what I mean? The noise of these cars
You
going.
can't suffer from asthma.
Yep.
You
Around
can't
it,
say your children to get asthma and those things, but they say no, we don't need it.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about the fisher folks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep. You're going to put piles inside the middle of the river. The Demerara Bridge is a fast-flowing river. One other slow-flowing.
And the fishing folk
river,
done complaining already that the fish frightened and they're gone.
Exactly. So when you get up and say you don't need this thing, you know what I mean? People don't realize how detrimental it will be. It looks to them that we would support the government because the bridge is going to be finished quickly.
Yep.
But it's not really true. Down the line,
and David,
you suffer tremendously. Just like how Vince is telling about Hague Bosch, or people now they put in hazardous waste in it. Down the line, you will suffer tremendously.
Here's another. It's funny, or I wish it was funny. Noise. They're going to be driving. Probably we've never driven piles in Guyana before, as we're going to be driving piles in for this bridge. Okay, so you can imagine the noise. you know what's ironic about this here, Sharon? The EPA building, in
Sophia.
wi- in
Sophia.
Safaya,
Mhm.
that building was designed for driving piles. Not even the piles are not even comparable to what they're be driving at the bridge. Guess what? When they started constructing the building, they had to abandon that design and stop driving piles because of what it was doing to the neighborhood,
Mhm.
vibrating all the houses and
Mhm.
noises. So now,
Mhm.
so could you imagine what's gonna happen? The EPA had to abandon it
Well, this install
because of the
government want
noise.
to shake we up more. This percent
Exactly.
didn't do the damage, so they want to shake we up more. Folks, guys,
So it's so ironic and it's unbelievable.
very much so. And as we begin to wrap up our discussion, I see we're joined by a whole host of folks. I see Miss Keith has joined us, St. Romaine Adams has joined us, a whole host of folks across social media. Amanda Kendall has joined us. I see one, Jack Dio and Winseed Anil. Some fantastic names across social media. Oswida Tapin and all the other folks, guys. We want to see those emojis and we want to see those shares. Doc and David, you all talk about the fantastic things that this government doing, and quote unquote fantastic things that they're doing in terms of not wanting to do these EIAs and all of that. But there are things happening locally in Guyana that are stranger than fiction, even with the EIAs, because quite recently we saw a company that is headed by Sham Noctor, who was a candidate for the PPP in the 2020 elections. And Doc and David, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole EIA business says that whoever does this assessment has to be independent of the government, independent of the EPA. And Sham Noctor's name ended up on one of these documents. Now, for the life of me, I saw Exxon came out and apologized. But how does Sham Noctor's name, how does anybody name just end up on a document? If they're not
So
part of the process,
you
it is
you
mind-boggling to me. So y'all are the experts. Explain it to the Guyanese people. What fraud
well,
happening here?
I here I so if you believe that this was just some error by some clerk or somebody, if you believe then then
We
then
believe
then
that
then
elephants can fly.
I'll sell you the Demerara River Bridge.
They must have done
If you
sell it
believe
already.
that. If you
Doc, you
believe that
believe in Santa Claus? That's Christmas.
it is that easy for somebody's signature to get there by some,
And
you
this is
know,
an international company. International
yes,
company. Worth over
Yeah,
$300 billion. And they can tell me that any and everybody contract could just end up on an EIA?
yes,
exactly. Look,
yep.
listen to me, Sharon. I mean, slowly and slowly, because there's a saying in Guyana which I love. Muna run till they right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're catching up with them, all the time, because when you do these things, they always will come to light. They always will come to light. You know what I mean? First and foremost, EPA. I mean, I know other Vince would have there would have had to sit down and say, stop, hold on a second, you consultancy. What exactly is going on here? No apology. Don't just take an apology. How they didn't know how it's inadvertently got there and those things like that. No apology. You're supposed to now say, listen to me. For a nationally important project, you've already brought the whole process into disrepute.
Yep,
Calling it on a set of the process now on people will now challenge the findings, right?
yep,
So you have to do better than just writing a letter saying that we apologize.
yep.
That
It
seems
So
that
so
seems a little fishy to me. I don't know. But I don't think
it
that's how
it
international
is fishy.
companies operate. That a man's signature could just land on a document and then you call the man or you write a letter to apologize that his company had no
It,
part to play. It is foolishness. Come on, Exxon. Come on, PPP. Try another trick.
it is nonsense. Sharon, that is absolute nonsense. Like I said, if anybody believe that, then I've got the Demerara Bridge to sell them. If anybody wants to believe that this excuse with just writing a letter saying that Well, it was a mistake. Are you kidding me? A mistake?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are right. You know, we're ending up being the laughing stock of the international community. And David, just to veer a little way from the main discussion here. I mean, you must got your foot up and laughing so many days at the blackouts as they continue. When you see roads built just the other day falling apart, and then you had quite recently a glaring aspect of the incompetency. This turn to nowhere, these markings on Sheriff Street. I mean, Sheriff Street like a maze, like a puzzle now. You have to start
Yeah.
early to figure out how you're meeting from one end to the next. Right? With this turn to
Yeah.
nowhere, one lane going straight, and next lane turning into that one with the signage. David?
Well, first and foremost, let me talk about. Let me speak about projects and construction work. Say what you want about the coalition governments. All of this distractors and those things. You could say what you want and we accept it all. You, through your program, challenge all your viewers in and out again to find one road project done by the Ministry of Public Infrastructure that broke up, not in 8 months like the one that they have over there, in the 5 years that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Challenge them to go and show you a picture of any road project that broke up within the period in which we were there. Because of course we did right. But of course now the boys are back in town. They get a slab and a dash, slab dash, collect the money, pay out half the money to people and then split the money with somebody, you know what I mean? And that's it. But you must challenge. So there are a lot of criticisms people can level on our stewardship. Right or wrong, we're not debating that. But you must ask them, any one of them, name a road that we would have done that's 8 months after it broke, or even a year, even 5 years after. Every single one of those roads are still standing now because we believe in value for money. Coming now to blocks, well, you know what they say, eh? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yep.
So we started out, we took the system without any complaints in 2015. Everybody knew how bad it was without complaints. We took a lot of criticism early on, and we got it. We fixed it. We set it right. We set it on a correct a correct pathway to get finished. Then then the guys came back in. They brought in the old people. They brought back the CEO. Then they all who did. This is their government. The PPP said out they're incompetent. Wrote up a big document. The previous DPL board wrote that the man is incompetent. And it's a public document. Soon as they come back, they bring him back in. Well, if you bring him back in, so we back into blackout. They realize it's Christmas, so therefore maybe they try to get us in the festive mood. You know what I mean? So they give you like one time there, you know. And then of course, Sheriff Mandela.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the contract was the IDP contract, and of course it went out to open procurement, and this company, Chinese company, won it. They prepared a lovely bid. You know what I mean? So everything in the bid looked really nice, those things like that, fancy dress. The contract was awarded, ladies and gentlemen, 2017, you know. By 2018, July 2018, we realized that these guys didn't have a clue. So we wrote the IDB saying, listen, these guys ain't got a clue. We want to terminate the contract. The IDB said, no, there's a long process to terminate them, you know, let me work with them. They suspend the project and they tell the Chinese, well, get your act together, so forth and so forth. And that was in 2019. So most 2019 project was suspended because these guys couldn't get the act together. In 2020, we said, look, these guys still can't work. Of course, when the government changed, they said, go back, go forth and multiply. And that's what you have there now. You know what I mean? Anybody driving in the road is like it's like if we Lewis Hamilton. There are turns and twists on a straight road. And people and they have the temerity to try and justify it and say, so wait until the final markings are there. They put a mark which tells people to go turn left. There's nowhere to turn left. They rub it out the next day. So it is so confusing, and they have the temerity to say to people, don't talk so soon, wait until the finish right. But the lines that are there already,
Yeah.
are confusing. The mediums,
But I was coming
you can't
there because
you can't even go, I mean,
we
them little boys can't even go visit their girlfriend. They live in Guyana, they can't go visit their girlfriend over the road in East Penitence.
yep.
They
And
got passed by the police station and come back.
and if you pass the police
Everybody
station and you go down where the road has been expanded, the medium big, 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 big. Take a look more the road. So I don't know. The medium big like a lane.
But boy, you know, I mean, that of course, you know, when the PPP doing anything, they want to make it different. And they want to do different from the coalition, be better. And one way to make it better the coalition is make the medium bigger.
Yeah, yeah,
Make
yeah.
it more confusing.
David, and you've raised
So
an
that
important
people
point.
can say that we different.
And the different, them is different.
Yeah.
Because they make
very.
just like the whole oil and gas sector. They made a lot of noise when they were in opposition. Now they got the whole thing to fix, and his excuse is, look, David, you have pointed out they talk about Mandela, y'all didn't do this right. Right? Now look the madness that's happening. They talk about the airport. Right?
Sharon,
one Edgel went and laid down the law. Irfan went and laid down the law, and then where we there?
Listen to me. 18 months later, not a single thing. We just last Saturday, I picked up somebody from the airport. Exact same thing. You wondering where this $9 billion US dollars that the Chinese put, and they have 2.5 billion in our budget this year.
Yeah.
Which is worked out to almost 20 million US dollars for 2021 to be spent. Anybody, all people in there are sure. Exact same airport that we left when they laid out the laws, the exact same function operational airport that they have there.
Mm-hmm.
Here,
not a thing different.
Sharon, the other thing is, now one of the big excuses now, of course, you hear come out loud and clear with the auditing of the 9.5 billion is that we do not have the capacity and expertise. Well, let me give you an example. They talk about we don't have it in Guyana, but they're doing the opposite to make it happen. At EPA, for example, when I was there, we established a study leave program where the EPA was going to be sponsoring students to go to university, UG, or wherever to do things that would enhance the EPA capacity. You know what they told them up to last week? That they have no use for that. They're on their own, and the EPA is not a university, and it's expected that people are going to come and leave the EPA as they please, rather than trying to retain people and retain your expertise. That's their attitude now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the EPA is just a microcosm as to what's happening. Let's go to the 9.5 billion. They claim that they didn't have any qualified Guyanese. Well, I know, Sharon, of a company in the diaspora, a well-established company in the diaspora, that put in a proposal to do the auditing of Exxon for that 9.5 billion. And what are they saying? Until now, the person have not even it's a black company, by the way. They have not even got the courtesy of a call to say that they never received, that they're not qualified. But all you're hearing is that there were no Guyanese who were qualified, which is a blatant misrepresentation.
Correct. And then they're talking about empowering, Afro-Guyanese.
You talk exactly. You thought here's a great opportunity to empower a qualified company with black leadership, but you just reject them and didn't have the courtesy to tell them they didn't make it and why they didn't make it.
But because of public pressure, and what you guys have been saying, they seem to have made an about face. At least on the auditing, they say they're going to now look back at local companies. The same foolishness.
Sharon, that is smoke and whistles, right? Smoke and whistles. They only said that they just get up and say that just to try and abate their public criticism.
Here's their tactic, Harold. You know what's their tactic? they come out and say, well, okay, yes, we're gonna do the audit, and hopefully it's gonna go away one day. I want to know how are they gonna do the audit when the contract says that with 2 years expiration you cannot do an audit. Let the president and vice president should come out and explain to the Guyanese people. You say that the contract is sacrosanct. Well, how are you going to go and do this audit when the contract says you cannot do it after 2 years?
Well,
How
they
are
can
gonna
come
do
out
that
and say that afterwards, when the
without
time has elapsed, that,
communicating?
oh, you can't audit the contract. No, because the time gone. That's the trick of the thing. That's the playbook.
Well, how? And now they come out and say that they're going to do it anyway. How are they going to do it without renegotiating the contract?
Yeah, yeah.
They need to explain that to the public.
Well, you know,
That's
Doc,
the one.
I know, David, you guys are from the old school, and there's a saying that when you can dazzle with brilliance, then you baffle with BS. Then that's happening.
Yeah, yeah.
They're baffling us.
You-
They're
You know,
baffling us.
You drop a lot of dust. You drop a lot of dust with smoke.
guys, I want to thank you. I want to let that be the last word in the discussion. I want to thank both you, David Patterson and Dr. Vincent Alexander. David Patterson, of course, is a former Minister of
Hey, that's
Infrastructure.
Alexander Adams.
Adams, sorry, my apologies. David Patterson is our former Minister of Infrastructure. Did some fantastic work. Listen to me, David. I ain't want to start another discussion, but I'm gonna have you back. I'm gonna have Doc back. Now, a man was talking this morning about some ground that people repair someplace, and that's why he's supporting this man 1,000% who refurbish ground and all of that. Listen to me. Listen to me. Look, it's just that I don't want to have lives to give these people life for the foolishness that they're talking. I want to know if that ground destroy in 5 years, right? I want to know with some of those roads that you build, David, in Letem and Mabaruma and Maruka and all of that. Those people should be behind the coalition and 1,000% if that is the yardstick. But we left off another discussion. David did fantastic work in infrastructure. And Dr. Vincent Adams, not Alexander, Adams, Duncan Adams, did some fantastic work at the EPA, but these jagabats taking all of the praise, taking all of the glory for coalition work, coalition projects still, because they went in the other day and even David did an EIA, David did a lot of studies with these big projects. Hear them, coalition never do nothing, but we can use their studies for these
Yes,
projects.
exactly, yeah.
Y'all take
And
these
that
people
went past
lies
everybody.
and broken
They
promises.
never did that work.
We never do nothing. You understand me? But the opening police station that we started, polytechnic clinics, the opening this, that, the project that we initiated, but we never do nothing. But that's another discussion. David Patterson and Dr. Vincent Adams, thanks for joining the program Below the Belt today. Who vex? Who vex lose? Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks for having me, Sharon. It was a
Hey,
pleasure.
Nice being on, Sharon. Appreciate it.